Elizabeth Audencream.
This one's wife, how she could have been successful. We go back a number of years, and most of us had never heard of this one's wife. Some people may have known her as a consequence of her being in Suits, but the world at large was oblivious to this woman, and I hear many of you saying, oh, if only we could go back to that. She then, through her social climbing, driven by her narcissism, managed to ensnare Prince Harry, and it wasn't before long, as a consequence of copious amounts of spicy poontang and the utilisation of his vulnerabilities against him, along with false compassion and a variety of other manipulations, that she found herself married into the royal family. This is a woman who actually could have been a hugely successful megastar. She could. You might be thinking, oh, come now, HG. That would never be the case. But she could have been. If her narcissism had guided her in a particular way, and it has done so with other narcissists in similar situations, if it were a different form that had guided her, it would have caused her to recognise that the harnessing of the institution of the royal family would be advantageous. What she did was basically turn up at Apple and go, okay, Steve Jobs is dead, I'm his replacement, I know everything there is to know about technology and programming and coding, give me the CEO's office, give me that swanky car, pay me X million dollars a year. And the natural reaction from the board would be, who the fuck are you? You're an unknown. You don't have any noticeable talent in this field. How dare you come here and demand all of this? And that's essentially what she did when she turned up at the royal family. Oh, I know better than all of you. I want this changing at my wedding. I want to wear this. I want to do this. I want to do that. What? You don't like it? I'm going to scream and shout at you. Harry, what I want, I get. Oh, yes, my little pumpernickel. And thus she turned up, calling the shots from the very beginning. She did so, driven by her sense of entitlement. She did so because she has no accountability for her behaviour and has no emotional empathy. But there are other narcissists that share that sense of entitlement, lack of accountability and absence of emotional empathy, but would tread a cannier path, one where they would recognise, all I need to do is fit in for a period of time, and I can turn this to my advantage. If she had made herself useful, she would have garnered so many advantages. She would be seen as modernising the royal family without changing its fundamentals. That she would be seen as, in the words of Thomas the Tank Engine, a good engine. She would be a good egg. That she was an indispensable member of the royal family. Here we are, we've welcomed a person of colour, an American divorcee, with all of those differences, and she has embraced the institution. People love her, she goes on royal tours, people are excited to see her. That's all she needed to do. Embrace and harness the institution. A narcissist is capable of doing that because what it would do would, in effect, give the institution a golden period whereby she behaves herself. And in so doing, what happens? She's known as being polite. She's known as being courteous. She's known as being fun. She's known as being interesting. The palace can see that the public love her. She's an asset to us. And then, at a later juncture, she could start to call some shots because she's earned the right to do so. In a similar way, as I just mentioned, you don't turn up at Apple on the first day with no qualifications and start telling them how it is. You go in at entry level. You work hard. You show yourself to be talented, indispensable, someone that can be relied upon. You secure your promotions, and then you can start to call the shots and start to throw your weight around a little bit because you've earned the right to do so. Her narcissism could have led her to do so if it was more evolved, so that she became this indispensable member of the royal family, which she became this beacon for other people to say, do you know what, isn't she fantastic? And then she could start to make certain demands, not huge ones, but certain suggestions, and it would carry more weight, both in terms of, well, actually, we respect her opinion because she's shown herself to be useful within the context of the royal family, and also, we can see how well she's liked, and we don't want to lose that. It's a little bit like a football player. He scored plenty of goals for you. He comes along and he wants more money. You're more likely to want to give him that money because he's delivered. She didn't deliver. Instead, her narcissism took her on a route of making demand, causing trouble, falling out with people, and it wasn't backed up by anything. But she could have been successful, and she could have done this for a number of years, and then looked to have left the royal family, not in a fit of pique, but as the next stage of her advancement. That she could have remained within it and had a very successful life, but if she had cultivated that level of affection from the public, that level of admiration from members of the royal family for the way she discharged herself with public service, she could then have left with their blessing. And then, having established herself in such a way, the world would have been her oyster. She could have embarked upon a lecture circuit because people would have seen that she gave of herself, that she was somebody who had given a period of her life to service and was well liked. They'd want to hear what she got to say. And even though what she'd got to say might not be that inspiring, it might be that she would have the nous to involve people that could make her more interesting, or she'd just be able to trade on the goodwill that she had generated as a consequence of behaving herself. Remember, there will have been instances here and there, like any narcissist, of misbehaviour, but because that would have been outweighed by the public face of her excellence, people would say, we'll just sweep that under the carpet. We don't want to lose this major player. It's similar in the way, for example, Elton John has a hissy fit, but you don't decide, well, bugger him, we're not going to have him play at the arena. You basically smooth over what Elton John wants because he's such a superstar and delivers in his concerts. So similarly with this one's wife, she would have caused some issues along the way, but they would have been swept under the carpet because she would have demonstrated that she was worth keeping. Instead, she never went down that route. She never got that far. But if she had, at a certain point, she could have exited the royal family with their blessing. Thank you for what you've done in the 5, 6, 7, 10 years that you've been here. Off she goes, moves back to America, goes on the lecture theatre circuit, does all humanitarian works, and at that juncture, brands would be falling over themselves to be affiliated with her. Member of the royal family, although no longer working, demonstrated track record in humanitarianism and public service, hasn't slated the family, no victimhood, no whining. She would be a marketing individual's dream, and you would have the fashion houses and the cosmetic giants and the various products wanting to sign her up. She would have been able to do all of that, receive all of the attention associated with it, the residual benefit by way of the money, and thus a combination of continuing humanitarian works in the United States, going out on the lecture theatre, the after-dinner speaking circuit and earning huge amounts of money, coupled with endorsements and sponsorships and public appearances. She would have maintained goodwill, been worshipped, and made shitloads of money too. And she could have done all of that and still be a no-talent individual. But what she was then trading off was that she had demonstrated herself to provide service and that she had behaved, that she had been a good royal, making her likeable. Her narcissism may well have gone down that route, but it didn't. And instead, what you now see is an individual who actually had that opportunity and everything that came with it, And instead, because of the way that her narcissism has acted, her toxicity came to the fore very early on. That she became known as Duchess Difficult, that she stamped her cloven hoof and demanded things, and Harry, fool that he is, ran around trying to placate her. That she drove wedges between Harry and his family, that she isolated her own family, that she lied and revised history and smeared. You're fully familiar with all that has gone on. And it's very much the case that this is a woman who could have been hugely successful, and instead has thrown it all away so that she ends up failing to fist bump somebody in a coffee advertisement. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.